There we go.
Yeah. Hey guys, this is Joey and Nate here from the Rumble Seat to do this for the first time. The what we're going to call the Rumble Seat Rabble, just sort of a podcast video series, I guess, where we can talk about things as a group. Hopefully, in the future, we can add another member or two of the writing staff. It seems that everybody was pretty busy this weekend with doing whatever it might be, but we're here with you for this time. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. So I want to bring up to begin with. I'm watching on TV above me, Tech baseball playing Illinois right now in the NCAA regional up in Nashville, and it's 1-0 Illinois after 2 innings. Freshman Jonathan King on the mound, throwing pretty well. He got in a little trouble in the second inning, but hopefully the Jackets can put a couple across in the next few innings, and we can stay alive in the tournament.
Yeah. They played Eastern Tennessee and beat them, 5-1 yesterday or something. They threw Buck, which I kind of am ambiguous about. I really didn't like that call because if we get past them, then we had to play Vanderbilt, and it's going to be really hard to beat Vanderbilt without Buck. But Danny Hall's the one who's been managing its sports team for a baseball team for 20-some-odd years, so what do I know, right?
Well, it's interesting because, Vanderbilt's going to be a really tough game anyways, and I don't like the idea of playing them after already having played today. So, we need a little luck, I think. And the other thing, too, is that you got to beat them twice if you're actually going to move on in the tournament. And given that they're I think they were the number 2 overall seed, and they had been number 1 for a lot of the season before they lost in the SEC championship game to LSU. So, certainly a tough road ahead for Tech, but hopefully they can pull off some magic. We know that they're fully capable of it at this time of the year, just maybe not exactly when we want them to be. But the ACC as a whole doing very well in the baseball tournament, which is always good to see. So hopefully we can see some continuation of that.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to bring up was the golf team. They made the Final Four of the NCAA tournament this weekend. They had a pretty great run where they finished. So basically Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they played stroke play against all the other teams. And they finished second out of all the teams that were involved, which is pretty awesome to see. I think they were the number 7 team overall in the country.
How does that work? Do they match up this guy plays this guy plays this guy in stroke play, and then?
No, so stroke play is basically your entire team just goes and plays. So you got a team of 4, and they go and play 18 holes, and you just combine the scores. And so they did that 3 days in a row, and they used that to determine who was going to play who in the match play. And when you get to match play, that's when it's person A matched up against person B, and I'm not sure exactly how the scoring goes, but basically it's a cumulative team score as far as we won 3 matches, you only won 2, so we win.
Okay. Okay.
And so that's what happened on Friday as we played UNLV, beat them. I think the score was 3-2. Yeah, it was one of our guys had to take them to sudden death extra holes and beat them on the first one with a birdie. And then yesterday they played against Alabama and lost to them 3-0-2. I guess they had 2 ties out of the 5 pairings. But in any case, impressive to see that they made it to the Final Four. Alabama went on to win the national title today. So always a good thing to see from our team that they're being nationally competitive. I know that we don't get a whole lot of attention to sports other than football, baseball, basketball, but I thought that was something worth pointing out that we should be really proud of them.
Yeah, definitely. It's they won the title last year, didn't they? Or was it the ACC they won? I can't remember which.
I can't remember specifically. I want to say they might have, but I don't know for sure. But I do know that they're one of our more successful programs. As far as sports go, which is so it's always nice to highlight what we're able to do outside of the ones that get the most attention.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and talk about real quick. We got a commit in football this week, something that hadn't happened for a couple months now, really. But Jalen Johnson, he's a wide receiver, defensive back combo, I guess, out of Alabama. We really wanted him as a safety. And he hasn't gotten a whole lot of attention so far from any
They never do.
Yeah, no, they don't. From a lot of media outlets, I think Rivals has him as a 2-star, 24/7 has him as a 3-star, and then Scout and ESPN haven't got him ranked at all. But Nate, have you had a chance to watch any film on him?
No, actually, I got the pulling it up right now. Except the link in the story is broken.
Neat. Uh, well, I had a chance to watch a little film on him, and a couple of things I really saw was he pursues the play well. There was one play I saw where a running back from the opposing team broke through the line and was like a foot race to the end zone, and Jalen was able to run him down and it was probably about a 50-yard chase, and he was able to run him down and tackle him probably about 5 yards short of the goal line. And granted, he laid on the ground after that, like huffing and puffing, but I'm sure I would be too.
Yeah.
I'd be there like a week later, but yeah. So it was good to see that. He also tackles real well. He does well in the open field. He doesn't need a whole lot of help to get the job done. So that's always something that's very helpful in a safety, is someone who can actually play the safety, and not need help, not need that assistance.
Yeah. Yeah. I like him. I'm watching some of his WR highlights right now, and he just fought off a guy or a couple guys in the end zone, and caught a nice fade. So hopefully him and Vad can get that going next year. That'd be nice to see.
I was going to say the other thing he seems really good at is on defense creating turnovers, which then could translate to offense of catching passes and such.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he almost reminds me of one of my favorite guys that you're fully aware of, Jamia Thomas, where he's not afraid to take that risk and try and jump a pass and pull it down before the receiver can. And that could become very dangerous at times, but it's one of those high risk, high reward things, where either you completely blow it, blow your coverage, or you've got your team the ball back.
Yeah, yeah. Jamia has done both several times, to our joy and lament, as I remember. So
definitely. So it'll be interesting to see that. A couple of things I was kind of curious about was really his competition level. I don't know. I think he plays in the 4A leagues of Alabama, which I don't know really what kind of talent they have over there. I can't imagine that Alabama runs short on football talent, but
yeah.
We'll see. He's 6'2", 193, which is a little slim for college football player, but again, he hasn't even gone through his senior year of high school yet, so plenty of time to get that in order to be able to play. And then his offer list, his only other offers that were listed at the time were Furman University and Southern Miss. Southern Miss not being a BCS school, and Furman being being an FCS school in the sense of it's one AA school, so really not an impressive offer list, but and I guess he also had interest from Auburn and Tennessee, and that's kind of what I would say is, how many times have we seen Tech get a player and then just everyone's like, who on earth is this guy? I have no idea. Mm-hmm. And then next thing you know, like, everyone's after him.
Yeah. Francis Kalen is my favorite example. There was the lineman, was it 2 or 3 years ago, we lost to Auburn at the last minute. And, heck, the guy's this year. I mean, excuse me. What did we lose, like 4 in the last week or something? I mean, just some absurd number. So this is I've always had people say, oh, Paul Johnson can't recruit, blah, blah, blah. That's total crap. Why would this be happening if he couldn't recruit? I mean, maybe there's a little closing problem on the staff. But like someone brought it up the other day, they only get one visit to the kid. That's it. It's not like the coach can walk in the kid's door a million times and say, this and that and the other to get him to stay. He's got one shot. So,
absolutely, and obviously it has been quite the fiasco in recent years as far as kids flipping within a week or two of signing day, and it's been an absolute mess. And I would hope that they're coming with some rule changes to make that a little easier. Something like an early signing period,
mm-hmm.
Where you can get them signed and locked down before anyone really has a chance to try and steal them from you. But yeah, I refuse to question their ability to evaluate talent, really, based on the fact that it's never really been a problem in the past. Um, whether or not that people think somebody is good at the moment that he commits has kind of become irrelevant in the sense of doesn't really matter because they always prove to be pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, like I'm pretty sure last year around signing day, I don't think that there was a guy in our class that folks weren't after.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, man. It's ridiculous. Like this staff's talent evaluation it's something else. They got a gift for it. I'll tell you that.
And I think that's a big deal.
Tenbroof continues that trend, but
definitely, and I think it's a big deal for us, and given our situation, that maybe we can't really recruit too well against a Georgia or an Alabama or all these other big-time powerhouses that are around us, and so it really helps to find kids before they do and sort of get the foot in the door way earlier.
Yeah.
They say a lot about how getting the first offer to a kid is a huge deal. And so I've always been kind of impressed with the way our coaches are able to make the best of a pretty bad situation. But in any case, excited for Jalen. I think he can add a lot, and here's to hoping for a few more commits in the near future. Nate, I think you were going to talk about one of our commenters on the article. Let's see, we had posted an article back on the 29th, which would have been Wednesday, asking for questions. And Nate, you said you had one of those you wanted to mention.
Yeah. Pardon me. GT Jason was talking about it, and he said in response to a couple other guys, he's never talking about Tech's going to get the respect it deserves. He said it's, quote, the UCLA Syndrome, I'm sure of it. We're a darn good football team, and we will just always be overshadowed unless by some miracle we dominate UGA for about 30 straight years and go on to win big in the new playoff system nationally. Even then, we still might not have more fans than them. As a good example of this is what I really like about this comment. This is some pretty fantastic analysis. Consider how South Carolina's basically useless until about 3 years ago football team was still more popular than Clemson in that state, despite Clemson's dominance in the series and more national accolades. It's just the way it goes when you're not called the University of your state, end quote. And I thought that was a pretty impressive thing to say, or not impressive thing to say, but like impressive analysis, because that seems to be the way it is in schools nowadays. If you are not the state school, then you're I don't want to say you're pretty much porked, but it makes it a lot harder for you because you don't just have the massive institutional support and sidewalk people aren't just going to say, well, I'm going to support Georgia Tech, I'm going to support Georgia because it has the name of the state. It's the University of Georgia. It's the Banner University or whatever. And I just thought a little bit about that and how ridiculous that seems. And later on, a few guys were saying something about that's never going to change until Tech becomes the university that the state's really trying to promote, and the university that the state is like most proud of. And right now, it seems like UGA. I don't know. I didn't grow up here. Was that the way it always was, Joey, where UGA was like the premier university, and that's who the state like trumpeted as, the godsend or whatever?
I mean, I would say that it's basically always been that way as far as I can remember. And part of that you got to remember is I was going to school in public schooling where 80-90% of the teachers went to the University of Georgia. So, of course, they're going to trumpet, their alma mater. I was going to agree with you, though. It definitely puts you at a disadvantage to not be what the state might consider the premier institution, so to speak. I think that there are some exceptions. I think about like Texas A&M. I don't think they're at much of an disadvantage because they're not the University of Texas.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely something you see in this part of the country, where and I think part of what it is that Tech is not as big of a school in the sense of numbers. Our student body is, I think it's half or a third the size of Georgia's. And so you just end up with a much larger alumni network, and combine that with all of your sidewalk, Walmart fans or whatever, and next thing you know, you're all anyone wants to hear about. And so it's certainly an interesting situation. Again, great comment from GT Jason to point out the Clemson South Carolina series, because he's right. We sit here and talk about all the time. winning cures everything. We'll become the premier institution once we start winning consistently against Georgia, etc. Yet I'm not even sure how true that is. I don't know if there is anything that we could ever do short of having a massive amount of the state's help to promote ourselves.
Yeah.
But we can sit here and I guess complain about our situation all we want, but I'm not sure there's too much that will ever change about it. That's just one of the quirks of being a Tech fan.
The only thing I think could change it, you're right, is more population, and that means branching out to installing new colleges and new schools and fields Tech isn't used to having. And I don't know if that will happen. There's a lot of rabble around just campus and rumor mills and such that Tech might be going private soon, which just wouldn't surprise me at all, to be perfectly honest. But if that happens, then I think that'll cement the position, because I just don't think we'll ever get an endowment big enough to buy up land around the school and build new buildings and get all these new students if we go private. I think that'll really just keep it the way it is. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, that would certainly be interesting. I've heard nothing along the lines of that, and I'm sitting here wondering how even possible that would be. But
one of my professors said it, 2011. She was talking about it, and it had been discussed at some public policy faculty meeting or something. I don't know. It was probably her talking out her fanny, but who knows?
Wow, well, that's pretty credible source then, man. That's incredible. I'd be really interested to see if that actually happens, because
I'm not saying that there's imminent discussions or that it's going to happen in any way. It's just people were knocking the idea around, and it was oh, what if this happened? It's not actually I'm not trying to start a crazy rumor news story here or nothing. But that's what she said. Yeah. So.
Well, we love our crazy rumor news stories over from the Rebel Seat, so came to the right place for your news, people.
Yeah.
I guess one last thing we'll talk about, the preseason depth chart was released, I don't know, when was it? In the past week at some point, and I shouldn't really call it the preseason depth chart because it wasn't. It was the post-spring practice, pre-summer workouts, whatever, depth chart. Really just something for Paul Johnson to put on Twitter, I guess.
Yeah.
But there were some kind of interesting points in here. First that should be mentioned is that this does not include any freshmen. This does not include the kicker, Harrison Butker. This doesn't include any of your signees. If you haven't been to a practice yet, you're not on here. So it's of course it's very, very tentative. One of the interesting spots is listed at starting wide receiver. You have Darren Waller, which is the obvious choice. And then aside him is Corey Dennis, who spent about a year and a half, I think, at safety, and then he switched over to wide receiver last year after Anthony Autry's injury, just because we were that thin. And I don't know that he ever really saw much of the field at wide receiver, but he's still listed as a starter here with Traven Henry and Michael Summers listed at second string. And it's interesting on that note is I don't know if he actually plans to start the fall practice with Corey at number 1 on the depth chart or not. Part of me wants to think that it's kind of just a subtle encouragement of Henry and Summers to work a little harder, because we've seen in the past that there are occasionally these little quirks that Paul Johnson loves to use to play mind games with some of the players, I guess, to get them to work harder and such. But again, I'd have a hard time believing that Corey would actually end up starting at wide receiver.
Yeah, he didn't have any receptions last year from Ramblin' Wreck. I'm looking at it. So.
Yeah, and I think that he could be a pretty good wide receiver given some time. He is 6'2", 203. He jumps pretty well, has good ball skills, but just not enough experience at that position. And I think that I really do want to see what Traven Henry can do there. 6'3", probably 215. Showed a lot of very good skills in high school, and to the point that when we got a commitment from him, it was about a week before signing day because they wanted to just keep it hush-hush as long as they could so that nobody would jump in.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that we got quite the steal on that one. So, again, Traven Henry, that's what I look forward to start, I guess, across from Darren Waller. Michael Summers could see a lot of time too. But The other one, I guess people were kind of looking for an update on Francis Kalon, and he's, I guess, a third-string defensive tackle behind Euclid Cummings and Pat Gamble. And Callan, of course, coming out of high school, he was extremely physically gifted. Some might call him just a physical freak, just huge and athletic, strong, fast. And so there's some starting to wonder of, like, why can't this kid, why can't we get him towards the field more? And what it is, they're saying, well, he just hasn't had any experience with football at all. And so that's kind of inhibiting him. But so I would respond, you're playing defensive tackle.
Yeah.
It's not really rocket science as you would consider football positions. So going to certainly be interesting to see if we can get him more towards the field this fall. I think he can make a big impact.
Yeah. The on the upside of that, though, pardon me, wow, totally blanked. Adam Gotsis looked deadly in the spring game. I mean, I don't know how many of y'all were there, but he was amazing. Like, his form is perfect. He's 300 pounds. There's not an ounce of fat on that boy. He is all muscle. He is going to rock some people's worlds next season. I'm really excited to see what he can do. It's going to be impressive. And Jimmy Kitchen, too. Jimmy Kitchen deserves a shout-out. The backup, and I think is he defensive tackle or nose tackle? It's one of the two.
Nose tackle. He backs
nose
up
tackle.
Gotsis.
Yeah, he motored on pretty good, and he's huge. I mean, him and Pat Gamble are a sight to see in real life. They're big old boys.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a good year for the defensive line. Definitely, I'm really excited about that. Really, that after that, his question got answered in the spring game. My only concern now is the wide receiver position, but who isn't concerned about that this year?
Right.
So,
yeah, I think that's the obvious point of contention on the team is who's going to play aside Darren Waller. We're so happy that we've got Vadley and Justin Thomas throwing the ball around, but now who are they throwing to? And the A-backs certainly will assist in some of that passing game, but I don't think that they would complete the passing game. There needs to be more than just a couple of smaller running backs out there to catch the ball.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you were saying, man, Adam Gotsis, he is something else. I've seen him walking around campus, and when you tell me that kid is 300 pounds, he doesn't look like it.
No, it's wild. It's wild. Yeah, he is, man.
I consider him similar to like just a farm boy. Like he's not big, but he's just so strong for his weight. It's pretty ludicrous. I think he could have a huge impact. And again, talking about the talent evaluation and recruits that were given almost no noise when they came in, he started playing, quite a bit towards the end of last year.
What, did he start 3 games at the end of last year, was it?
I think so. I think he started, I think, a couple of them at least at the end. But a guy that you kind of constantly watch and say he's having a huge impact on what's going on out there. So good stuff from him. The other spot that I think is going to be really interesting is, again, also on the defensive end, defensive line, is the end spot, where they've listed Emmanuel Dieke and Chris Crenshaw as starters at the strong side end spot. Of course, Itachi would be on the weak side. And then behind them is Anthony Williams. And there's been some chatter along the lines of Dieke and Crenshaw are just not really performing up to what people thought they were going to be able to. And I'm getting kind of curious as to whether we might start seeing Anthony Williams, who showed a lot of potential in high school. They said he was really quite the freak when it came to rushing the passer and everything. So going to be real interested to see how that turns out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Rod Chungong, is that how you say his name? I really have no idea.
I think Chungong sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, he was. He's a large person, too. He'd be another guy to watch out for at the defensive end, because he's listed as backing up Itachi right now with Tyler Stargell. So I think he might be able to make some noise and get over on the, strong side.
Yeah, and both him and Stargell, I've heard great things coming out of spring camp about them. So it's going to be nice, of course, having the talented NFL prospect Itachi at end. That'll be great. But then having 2 guys behind him that if he ever needs to take a break for a couple plays, there's not too much of a drop-off, and they can come in and do it as well. But yeah, the defensive line, I'd say, is looking up from what we've had in previous years, and I do think that a four-man front compared to the three-man front we've seen, I think the four-man front fits better for our personnel. Again, there was always sort of that concern about you need that one big mountain in the middle of the man. You talk about like John Jenkins up at Georgia was 6'6", 350 pounds or something like that. And we had something similar to that in T.J. Barnes, but especially after him leaving, it's like we didn't have another good option for the nose tackle spot. And so I think it's going to be a good thing. Going to a four-man front, you can get four slightly smaller guys, but very athletic, and I think it just fits well, and it's going to work out. I like Ted Roof's four-man front philosophy.
Me too, man.
I think it's going to pay some dividends, and I think the defense is going to be much improved this year, which will go a long way for us. I'm
extremely excited about it. Now if we can just find someone to catch a damn football, it'll be all right.
That passing game is going to be it's going to be interesting, and I think that, honestly, a successful passing game is probably makes 2 or 3 games worth of difference in the win totals.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you there.
I think if you can't throw the football, you cap out at maybe 8 wins. And if you can throw the football, you're talking about 9 or 10 wins very much within reason.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be a big deal.
All right, well, it's going to be an exciting season regardless, and I'm looking forward to it.
Definitely will be. But I think that about does it for us here on the first edition of the Rumble Seat Rabble. We will be back with you guys at some point or other. I don't really know if we're going to do this weekly or bi-weekly, what it's going to be, but we want to kind of get this under our fingers a little bit and get a handle on it before we really kick it off in football season. So send us your questions. We love having things to talk about, and I think it was like Chaz mentioned or something that you guys are way more creative than we are, so help us out at any way you can. But other than that, thanks for joining us. 2-0 top 5, Illinois over the Jackets. Hopefully we can get some runs across again, but time will tell. So you guys have a great day, have a great week, and we'll talk to you guys soon.